how your initial reaction to the announcement speech by the Prime Minister feels like a mini budget announcement. Civil servant, a one-off payment, and also the
100 ringgit
100 ringgit
e-wallet.
e-wallet, that one. Yeah.
So, are you eligible for that?
I'm not working though. Welcome to Taylor's Take. I'm Yuan, majoring in Finance and Economics. Today we have here with us Dr. Ong, who is also the Program Director for Philosophy, Politics and Economics. So Dr. Ong, on the 27th of July, the Prime Minister of Malaysia announced a few economic plan under the current administration, titled as Economy Madani, Memperkasakan Rakyat. What is this
plan?
Economy Madani all about?
Correct.
It's quite confusing also sometimes
Correct.
you hear about it.
Yeah, Yuan, I get where you're coming from. I think in a nutshell, if I were to describe how this Economy Madani program is going to work out is, you think in terms of the ceiling and the floor. So Prime Minister has said, we want to raise the ceiling. We want to raise the ceiling until Malaysia achieves a certain GDP per capita and also a certain ranking in terms of our competitiveness and our income. At the same time, our Prime Minister is also very concerned about the people at the bottom, right? So he wants to raise the floor as well, so that the people at the bottom can be taken care of.
2 years ago, the government or the previous administration actually introduced the 12th Malaysia Plan. So how does this Economy Madani, how does it differ with the 12th Malaysia Plan?
The Economy Madani is a continuation from the 12th Malaysia Plan, but with added important elements that people need to know about.
I've watched the whole full speech by the Prime Minister. One thing I realized is that there's a lot of emphasis on digitalization.
One element that was announced by the Prime Minister, which is the setting up of something called GovTech Malaysia, whereby there will be a unit under the Prime Minister's office or the Ministry of Finance that will enable a lot of digital innovations and digital services and products to be rolled out from one ministry to many other ministries. Have you heard of something called the National Digital Identification Number?
Is it like the IC, is it?
It's something like the IC, yeah. It's a digital ID, so to speak. If let's say you wanted to go and access a certain government service under JPJ, for example, to renew your road tax or renew your license, you need to log into JPJ, you need to have one login. Then you go to another ministry, immigration, to apply for a new passport, you need to have another login. When you have a single national digital ID, you would be able to access all government services using just one login. Imagine how powerful that would be. Imagine how much time that would save for everyone if we had that.
1 or 2 days later, the Minister of Economy had also made a speech and commented about the lack of competition amongst the Malaysian economy.
I think there are a couple of things I want to highlight here. One is there may be some sectors of the economy whereby it is dominated by 2 or 3 large firms. And in this case, it could be the case of a monopoly or a cartel. And in these cases, even the Minister of Economy has said that we should encourage more competition. So break down some of the barriers to entry to allow more competition to flourish. And when we have more competition, we have more innovative firms and products coming into the ecosystem. And that would not just be good for the consumer, it will be good for young people like you who will be able to work for some of these more innovative companies and see some of the cutting-edge trends. I mean, you think about all the successful countries that have gone into high-income nation status, right? US, Japan, even now China is getting there. All of them have one element that currently Malaysia does not have enough of. All of them have good companies that have done well locally and then they have expanded abroad. So Malaysia also needs to do that. We need to create our own versions of Amazon, Google, maybe not at the scale, but maybe at the scale whereby we look at certain niche areas that we can compete.
I think a lot of us had their attention on is about low wages, which was highlighted in the Ministers of Economy speech about
and also the Prime
Minister's
speech.
Yeah, both of them highlighted. So the average Malaysian wage right now is actually quite low. I think it's about 2,800 or 3,200. So it's less than 3,500. The Economy Madani, Memperkasakan Rakyat economic plan, does it highlight any part to actually improve or higher up, like how you said, to a higher level, which increases the average wage of the average Malaysians?
Yeah. So actually the two occur simultaneously. The Minister of Economy has talked about the progressive wage model, whereby we get the government, the private sector, the employers, as well as the employees to come together to sit down to see how to increase productivity of workers, output per worker, and by extension, once you've increased that productivity, you'll be able to increase the wages of the worker all across the board. Right? So, I mean, just to bring it back to you guys, let's say you're doing auditing. A lot of the auditing stuff used to be very manual. Right now, with generative AI, with better sort of like software learning skills, you may be able to automate some of those processes, the lower value-added processes, and then you as an accountant, you as an auditor, you go in to focus on the more critical levels of analysis, looking at how the accounts can be optimized from a process standpoint to be able to improve productivity and the profits of the company moving forward. And then with that kind of higher value added, your wages should be higher as well.
If I'm a student, are there any short-term implications that I would enjoy under this whole economy Madani plan?
You guys are operating at a level where you're more educated, with more opportunities and more diverse opportunities that you want. And the economy Madani would be able to grow the number of good companies in Malaysia, both foreign as well as local. It will be able to grow the kind of activities that they are doing, the diversification that you talked about, thriving, innovative economy, opportunities in the digital space as well. You may start out as an auditor, but you end up being a financial controller for a fintech company. So the kind of opportunities that you have would be great, and hopefully the wages will also be high enough such that you won't feel you need to leave Malaysia to go and work in another country.
This is exactly the point, especially on future opportunities, and also it is not as incentivizing to go into another country for the same job, especially.
Maybe just to wrap up, I think I also throw the challenge back to all the Taylor students and also all the other students who are watching this clip. You guys also have to think about how you can add value to the economy Madani vision by trying to do things that are different from what your parents, your brothers and sisters used to do. Think of how you can add value to the economy in ways that are innovative, transformative, in ways which can really excite the people around you when you talk about how you want to contribute to this vision of economic transformation and change.